Jangan lupa like, share, komen, dan subscribe Anda sangat berarti bagi kami untuk menambah semangat membuat konten yang lebih bermanfaat.
Okay, let's go to the audience who've been waiting very patiently. Raise your hands, wait for a microphone to come to you. Let's go to lady here.
Thank you very much. I am Uighur. I have been cut off from my speaking to my family since beginning of 2017, just like many thousands of Uyghurs living overseas. And my question to you, Mr. Liu, does it really bother or concern you that the country that you made home after renouncing your Taiwanese citizenship is criminalizing the entire Uyghur people and implementing policies that major Western news organizations, lawmakers, and legal scholars have described as crimes against humanity? Thank you.
First of all, I have Uyghur friends. If it's valid that there are things which are not properly done, of course it's not good. Of course it's not good.
Earlier you said that it was propaganda from me. When you hear these stories, do you realize it's probably not best just to dismiss everything as propaganda?
I use propaganda because your abrasive, aggressive way of addressing it.
Okay.
Sorry.
So it wasn't about the substance, you just don't like my style. Okay, that's fine, I can live with that. The substance of it is, she's telling you what's going on, she can't speak to her family. Is that propaganda? I'm just asking. This lady said she
I
can't
don't
speak.
know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Victor wants to jump in. Go on, Victor.
No, for this outstanding lady, I would say if you are a Uyghur, I would treat you as a brother or sister, the same as I would treat the majority of the people among the Uyghur people. Secondly, if I can give you one piece of advice, I would say several things. If any of your Uyghur brothers and sisters and relatives are Communist Party members in China, then by party discipline, they are not allowed to go to a mosque. If they want to go to a mosque, fine, resign from the Communist Party of China. So the government in China has a discipline. If you are a Communist Party member of China, don't go to a mosque, go to the Buddhist temple, don't go to a Catholic
Before I
church.
go back to the audience, I need to ask you a follow-up on this. There are now reports, which haven't been really denied by the Chinese government, that the Communist Party that you talk about is sending Han Chinese people to live in Uyghur houses, to watch them 24/7 as they eat, drink, pray. Is that fake news as well?
There is no problem in believing in Islam. I have many Islamic friends.
Okay, you have
China.
Uyghur friends, you have Muslim friends, I get it.
No, however...
Do you have people living in your house against your will?
No.
Because a lot of Uyghurs do right now.
However, if anyone in China misuses Islam as a pretext to split Xinjiang away from China, that's a crime.
Are there people
So
living in
don't
Uyghur
commit a
homes
crime.
in Xinjiang right now on behalf of the Communist Party?
That I'm not aware of. I've never been inside the family of a Uyghur friend.
Unfortunately, a lot of Chinese Communist Party members have. Let's go back to the audience. Let's take the lady there in the green scarf at the back. Yes.
You said 5,000 people went to Syria and fight. And my question to you is, how did you let them to go Syria to fight with such a strict barrier? Every 100 meters, there are one checkpoint, and even though people can't go one town to another town, and such a strict surveillance, how did you let them to go to the Syria?
Victor, do you want to take that question?
Most of these Uyghur fighters now in Syria and previously and currently in Afghanistan have smuggled themselves out of China. So in that action itself, it's a violation of Chinese law again. There are smuggling activities bringing Uyghurs out of China through Myanmar, to Malaysia, for example. So this is a problem not only to China, but to China's neighboring countries.
Andreas Fulda, you're here, a China expert. I just want to get your take on this. This argument about terrorism, is that a credible argument in your view?
Well, you yourself made the point that every country has to deal with extremism. The question is how you do that. I think this idea that you need to create this racial nation where ethnic difference is not tolerated, where cultural difference is not tolerated, and where religious activity is not tolerated. I think this is, for the lack of a better word, a rabbit hole that the Chinese Communist Party has gone in, where I'm not quite sure how they can get out, where the off-ramp really is. Because do you want to keep like 1 million Uyghurs in these camps forever? or the next 5 years, or when you release them?
I need to go back to the audience, but very briefly, Victor, how long do these camps stay open?
First of all, I do not agree with the premise of your question. There are more mosques being built as we speak than probably any other religious establishments in China.
Fine, let's go back to the audience. This lady here in the black shirt in the second row.
China still has a poor social security net, and working labor rights and working conditions of the poor workers are still a problem in China. I want to ask, how can these conditions be improved?
Charles.
There is a shortfall in the Social Security pool. There's no question. One of the ways that has been addressed has been the allocation of 10% of the shareholding of state-owned enterprises, many of which are listed companies either in New York or Hong Kong or in China, and to allocate that into the Social Security pool.
But isn't the problem that, again, coming back to this idea of socialism, slogan or not, in the beginning of the show, you were telling me, oh, India wishes they could spend what we spend on defense. But is that really something to brag about when you spend, I think, 5% of your GDP on health and 2% on education, which is lower than what Sudan spends on health and education as a proportion of the budget? That's pretty embarrassing for a country your size,
Absolutely.
your wealth, calling itself socialist, abandoning the poor people when it comes to health and education.
I think health and education spending should be more. In terms
Why hasn't it been?
It's been increasing significantly.
But why is it so low? In a country that claims to care about the working class.
It could be spending more, sure.
Okay, let's go. Gentleman who was waiting with the hat.
I lost contact with my old family since early 2017. And I recently found out my siblings, and they are in that so-called concentration camps. And I don't know, are they still alive or not? And secondly, I don't know my mother's, she is well, and why I'm not allowed to communicate with them, and also why they're not allowed to my mother and my relatives to contact with me, and why my mom must suffer from not seeing and hearing from their sons.
Okay.
That's my question.
That's a statement. I have no idea about his
Well, let me
mother.
turn it into a question. When you hear such stories, aren't you concerned as a citizen of China as to what might be going on in your country?
Yes, I am.
And when you go back to China, you're going to do anything about it?
I'll find out more about the subject.
Okay, let's go back to the audience. I said at the back.
Personally, do you believe that China's notion of human rights is fundamentally different? And if so, how would you define China's human rights policy?
Okay, good question.
I think cultural differences are there. In terms of human rights, for example, cultural differences and actually concrete circumstances. There was a lot of complaint about the violation of human rights to force one family per child. But if that policy was not implemented, China would be over 2 billion people now who will feed them, who will educate them. So there are concrete circumstances and very pragmatic issues that have to be addressed.
Okay. Gentleman in the beard, I said, yep, if you want to stand up and get the mic.
Do you think it is good practice for the Chinese government to have full control over the information its citizens view online?
Do you take a sneaky peek at the rest of the internet when you're in the UK?
No, I don't have any problems because I don't take sneaky peeks of things that I'm not interested in.
Okay.
So,
but in terms of his question,
yes.
Should the Chinese government control the flow of information to citizens?
I think there should be some measure of control, including in the United States.
But total control in China?
That should be lessened. That should be reduced.
You'd like to see it reduced in China?
Yeah.
Do you think it will be?
In some cases, it has been.
Okay. Let me ask you this. We're out of time, but I do want to ask you this. You were born in Taiwan, a capitalist society. You moved to the US. As a child, you studied at NYU and Princeton. You worked at the UN. But in 1975, I believe, you gave up your Taiwanese passport and your US green card to become a citizen of the People's Republic. What made you give up all those liberties and freedoms and move to China?
I felt quite oppressed in the US.
Okay.
I participated with Martin Luther King in the Civil Rights March in 1968.
Wow.
And against the war in Vietnam. And I had one of my fellow students at Princeton beaten to death by rednecks just because it
Horrible
was
stuff.
Chinese.
And you thought China was the place to go to get more?
No, I just thought if they don't want a Chinese, I'll just be Chinese.
And you participated in MLK's protests, civil rights protests?
1968, yes.
Do you think those protests could ever happen in China?
I was actually shocked at how it took 200 years for the US to be addressing the issue of blacks sitting on the back of buses.
So China's behind in the timeline. You might get those protests, but not right now.
Well, I hope China doesn't have to have protests for these things to be
The
addressed.
protests aren't allowed at the moment, is the point I'm making. You can't protest in China in
No.
that way.
They
That's what
are-
you're avoiding.
No, there's plenty of protests in terms of even when the stock market crashed, people were protesting.
Terima kasih sudah menonton. Like, share, komen, dan subscribe Anda sangat berarti bagi kami untuk menambah semangat membuat konten yang lebih bermanfaat.